Boy, another dominant MTJ Monday. But behind him, the playoff bubble just got a lot more interesting. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove, New Hampshire Race Recap Edition, Monday afternoon edition. This race was scheduled, of course, for yesterday, but was postponed to today due to rain. I mentioned this yesterday, but all 4 NBC races so far this year have been impacted by weather in some way or another. I haven't even looked at the forecast for Pocono next weekend. I'm scared to, quite honestly. Lots to cover in this episode. A lot happened behind Martin Truex Jr. We'll talk about some of the top finishers, the standout performances. We'll take a close look at the playoff bubble with now only 6 races until the playoffs begin because there was quite a bit of shuffling today. We'll also put this race on the Groovy gauge at the end. Goodyear debuted an all-new, softer tire intended to wear out quicker, result in more passing on the long run. We'll assess how the racing played out today at the end of this episode, but let's begin with Martin Truex Jr. 3rd win of the season. I haven't done the math yet, but he won stage 1, he won stage 2, and he won the race max points day, and William Byron, I believe, finished outside the top 20. So I believe now Martin Truex Jr. is your points leader once again. Remember, the regular season champion gets an additional 15 playoff points that will follow them through each round of the postseason. Truex, Byron, Kyle Busch, Christopher Bell, at least before today, were very much in the regular season championship picture, but let's start with Martin Truex Jr. He dominated this race, led the most laps by far, swept the stages. This was the 3rd Cup Series race to be run on a Monday this year. Martin Truex Jr.'s won 2 of them. What more can we really say? Historically, Toyota has been the manufacturer to beat at New Hampshire. Martin Truex Jr. was fast in practice. He qualified on the front row. Neither Truex, James Small, or the pit crew made a single mistake today. They survived a few late race restarts, played the strategy perfectly. It was just a perfect day. And I know this win means a lot to Martin Truex Jr., who grew up in the New England area. He'd been close a couple of times, but he'd never won a cup race at the Magic Mile. So a special win for Truex to finally get that lobster in victory lane. But this was also a statement win, I believe. Truex won at Dover earlier this year, kind of a weird 1-mile track. He also won at Sonoma, an unusual road course that historically Truex has been great at. But to win at New Hampshire, a flat 1-mile oval, somewhat similar to the championship venue, Phoenix Raceway, that sends a message to the entire garage that Martin Truex Jr. may very well be the championship favorite. Long way to go, of course, but right now, that number 19 car is fast. They aren't making many mistakes outside of the Chicago street race. If I had to lock in my championship 4 picks right now, William Byron and Martin Truex Jr. are the only 2 drivers I would feel comfortable picking. Congratulations to Martin Truex Jr. Again, that team was mistake-free. I can't say the same about 2 of the other favorites entering today's race. Aric Almirola, remember 2 years ago, was struggling all year, came to New Hampshire in the middle of the summer and pulled off the upset, qualified for the playoffs, a huge moment. For much of today, I think that number 10 team was smelling another potential upset. He qualified 3rd. Aric Almirola was running 2nd. They played the 2-tire pitch strategy at the end of stage 2 to take the lead. Unfortunately, a rare, fantastic run for a Stewart-Haas racing car was derailed by a mistake on pit road. They did not get the right rear wheel nut secured on the restart. Almirola's right rear basically fell off. He slid up into the outside wall, crashed out. Aric Almirola did not finish today's race. Instead, he finished 34th. This may have been his best shot to qualify for the playoffs in what could be his final NASCAR season. I guess Daytona is still on the horizon here in a couple of months, but I think now that team's got to put all their eggs into that one super speedway basket where anything can happen. So very disappointing. Aric Almirola did not have the same raw speed as Truex, but again, he was running 2nd much of this race. We saw all those late race restarts and variable tire strategy. Anything could have happened. The pit crew cost them. That was hard to watch. Another driver who was probably the favorite coming into today was Christopher Bell. Coming into today's race, across 8 National Series starts at New Hampshire, Christopher Bell had finished first or second in 7 of them. 1 Truck Series win. He's won 3 Xfinity races here. Bell has never lost an Xfinity race at New Hampshire. He won the Cup race last summer, qualified on the pole. It's crazy to me in this day and age with SMT data. Every driver has access to every other driver's sensitive information. They know exactly how much to turn the wheel, exactly when to lift, exactly what line to take. In this day and age with so much data out in the open, fair game, I'm surprised no one has figured out why Christopher Bell is so good here. Either Christopher Bell or Kyle Larson probably passed the most cars today. It was a track position race. Bell had track position until his pit crew threw it away multiple times in the first stint of this race. At one point, Bell had to restart in the very back because his team had to tighten a lug nut. Somehow, Christopher Bell still managed to get stage points in both stage 1 and stage 2, but he was never able to crack the top 3. I think the furthest I saw him get up to was like 4th or 5th. At the very end, he took 4 tires when a bunch of folks took 2 or stayed out, so he restarted like 8th or 9th. And then in the closing laps, the driver made a mistake, trying to make up for lost time, trying to do too much, got loose, wrecked. So where did Bell finish? 29th. Oh, that's going to blow up his almost perfect record at New Hampshire. So 2 of the favorites, Almirola, kind of a dark horse. Christopher Bell, one of the heavy favorites. I think Vegas had him as the betting favorite coming in. Both made huge mistakes, whether driver, team, or both. Martin Truex Jr. really had no competition. Yeah, Blaney was threatening towards the end, but he too made a mistake. Or, well, I guess he or his pit crew. He drove over equipment. I'm not sure whose fault that was. Logano, I was never really that worried about unless he chose to use the bumper, a la Martinsville 2018. At a couple points, I thought Larson was fast, but the only times Larson was faster than Truex is the stretch in stage 3 where he had like 20 lap fresher tires. So, on equal tires, Larson had nothing for Truex. Truex had no competition once Bell, Almirola, and eventually Blaney took themselves out. Good win for Martin Truex Jr. Let's take a look at some of the top finishers. Everything's laid out a little weird again because I'm in the process of packing things up and moving. But there are your top finishers, your top 15. A top 5 finish for Kevin Harvick. I think he had a really good long run car. He just never got the track position early enough in the run to make anything happen. But in the middle of stage 3, during the cycle of green flag pit stops, Rodney Childers had Harvick run long. Eventually, he pit for 4 fresh tires, came out, was able to get some of his track position back, but then he got a timely caution. The Noah Gragson crash into the outside wall allowed Harvick to stay out. He'd only pit like 20 laps earlier. It was a bold call, but right now, Harvick's just racing for wins. He is virtually locked into the playoffs on points. You just want to win a race, get some playoff points, win in your final season. That's what they're trying to do. This was probably the only move they could make to give themselves a chance. Despite being on old tires, he held on those final 3 restarts to finish inside the top 5. Great day for Kevin Harvick. Brad Keselowski was in the top 10 all day long. Another great run for him. Then a bunch of Toyotas. The 2311 cars were fast this weekend. Both Reddick and Bubba Wallace qualified inside the top 5. They both managed to finish inside the top 10. I'll talk more about Bubba Wallace in a moment because he had a roller coaster of a day. Austin Dillon employed a similar strategy to what Harvick did. Managed to get a top 10 out of it. Chase Briscoe was bailed out by the Eric Jones caution late in stage 2. Briscoe got the free pass as a result of that caution, then stayed out at the beginning of stage 3, and then credit to him, ran really well, was smooth, consistent, pretty fast, and held on for a top 10 finish. Decent day for Eric Jones, considering he spun out in the middle of stage 2, as I just mentioned. Chase Elliott, Alex Bowman, Michael McDowell. Let's go and flip this over now and look at the playoff bubble. Harvick, Keselowski, Buescher are all thankful that Eric Almirola didn't steal a win today. Bubba Wallace, thanks to his resiliency, sneaks back into the top 16 by a very slim margin, though, only +2. Behind him, Michael McDowell, +1 to the good. Let me start with Bubba Wallace. He came into this weekend preaching no mistakes. We have the speed. We just can't beat ourselves. Bubba Wallace then proceeded to do everything he could in the first half of this race to beat himself. He slid through his pit box twice, costing himself, again, very valuable track position. He threw away a good qualifying effort on Saturday. Things weren't looking good for the 23 team. But then, again, that Eric Jones spin towards the end of stage 2 kind of saved his butt. Credit to Bubba, he did a good job holding off Truex for a while there to stay the last car on the lead lap. I think he was like 17th or 18th place. Unlike Briscoe, who stayed out at the end of stage 3 to get his track position, Bubba Wallace actually pit for 4 tires and restarted in the mid-teens. But that 23 car came to him in the second half. Bubba Wallace, great resiliency, drives his way to a top 10 finish, salvages what was otherwise going to be an unremarkable, somewhat disappointing points day, and sneaks his way back above the cut line, at least for the time being. So honestly, I'd still call this a missed opportunity. Bubba Wallace should have gotten stage points in stage 1 and stage 2, and he'd have maybe a 5, 10, or 15 point cushion. But the driver made some mistakes early, made up for them late. An okay day, all things considered, but still a missed opportunity. Michael McDowell managed to squeak out a single stage point at the end of stage 1. He ran like 10th to 15th all day long, kept with it, stayed with it. He's still above the cut line by the slimmest of margins. Let's talk about the drivers just below the cut line. Daniel Suarez is -1. He was fast in stage 1, collected a few stage points, but then I honestly don't know what happened. I looked up towards the end of this race and he was running like 27th. Suarez and Travis Mack employed a bold strategy. They ran really long during that final cycle of green flag pit stops and then caught that caution when Gragson wrecked. Suarez wound up finishing 16th when I think he easily could have ended up 20th or 25th. So all things considered, that bold strategy, I believe, worked out for them, but I don't know what went wrong. They seemed to have speed early on. What did I miss? Why was Daniel Suarez out of contention midway through this race? He's lucky he's only 1 point out of the playoffs as of now. AJ Allmendinger had an unremarkable day, finished 19th. He was up around 11th, I think, early on, racing hard to get a stage point or two when he spun out. Didn't cost him too bad. He just didn't have speed today. Ty Gibbs, you want to talk about a missed opportunity. That 54 car was top 10 worthy, no doubt. But I don't think Ty Gibbs ran a single lap inside the top 10 today. It started on Saturday when Gibbs made a mistake, almost spun out in qualifying. He started in the back, started to make some passes early on today, and then they employed some pit strategy to get back into the top 15 into the mix. But Gibbs could never drive his way up further than like 11th or 12th. And then I don't know what happened at the very end of this race, but with 2 laps to go, either he got sent or he made a mistake. Gibbs was in the wall. He ends up finishing, I think, 27th. Entered today, I think, 23 points below the cut line. He leaves -41. A huge missed opportunity for Ty Gibbs, considering how fast his JGR teammates were. Hamlin was in the top 10. Bell should have been top 5. Truex obviously won the race. I know you're a rookie, but with great equipment comes somewhat greater expectations. Call me Uncle Ben. I had high hopes for Ty Gibbs this weekend, and unfortunately, he let me down. Let's talk about the Hendrick guys real quick. Alex Bowman, Chase Elliott. What was that? I'll go a little easier on Alex Bowman, partially because I have lower expectations for him in that 48 car, but also he did sneak into the top 10 at the end of stage 2, had a couple really good restarts, and got, I think, 4 stage points. So honestly, nicely done. But neither Bowman nor Elliott really at any point had legitimate top 10 cars. And I understand that all of Hendrick was a little off. I don't know where William Byron finished, although he did get some stage points in stage 1. Kyle Larson, though, was up there in the top 5 at the end. I expect more from Hendrick Motorsports. I expect more from Alex Bowman, and I especially expect more from Chase Elliott. Chase Elliott somehow finished 12th at the end of this race. I think that was the best he ran all day. Bowman was 14th, so respectable finishes, but for much of the day, Bubba Wallace was faster than them. Ty Gibbs, I thought, was faster than them. I'd say even Michael McDowell, Daniel Suarez, at least for some of the day, were faster than them. Those are the drivers that Bowman and Elliott are competing with for one of those final 2 playoff spots. Chase Elliott and Alex Bowman should not get outrun by Michael McDowell for the whole entire first half of this race. No disrespect to Michael McDowell, but that just should not happen. You're Hendrick Motorsports. In the case of Chase Elliott, you're a NASCAR Cup Series champion who's been to 3 straight championship 4s. Bowman has not looked the same since he was injured. I don't know if it's the injury or if it's just, typical Alex Bowman midsummer slump. But Chase Elliott has actually looked pretty good the races he's run this season. He's not showing top 2 or top 3 speed, but he's running like 5th to 8th most weeks. Sometimes, like at Chicago, he got bailed out by a lucky caution, or by NASCAR shortening the distance strategy went his way. But more often than not, Chase Elliott has run well this year. So what happened today? Jeff Gordon was in the media just a few days ago saying, we're not too worried about those guys. I said it then, I'll definitely say it now. It's time for a sense of urgency. I didn't sense any urgency out of Chase Elliott, Alan Gustafson, Alex Bowman, Blake Harris, either of those teams today. And that was kind of a shock. Hey, I get it. Some days you just miss it. You just don't have it. But we're in the middle of a crucial stretch of races. If Bowman wants to point his way in because he's not winning a race, maybe he wins Daytona, that's it. Chase Elliott at this point probably needs to win a race. I don't think pointing his way in is a likely strategy at this point. A couple weeks ago, I would have said, yeah, but between Atlanta, between today, not really anymore. You can't have many off weekends this summer and hope to make the playoffs, considering the deficit these two teams, these two drivers are in right now. I was just disappointed. I expected a lot more. But that was a look at the playoff bubble. Real quick, I forgot to mention Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch wrecked early on in this race. That was surprising. I did mention him briefly as a driver who, coming in to today, was in the mix, looking for the regular season points lead. I don't know where he's fallen to now, but he finished, did he finish last today? Yes, last. 36th place for Kyle Busch. Just got loose. The groove at New Hampshire widened quite a bit, but I think Kyle Busch and a couple other drivers were a little too quick to venture up there, and they just didn't have the grip they needed and spun out. We saw Corey LaJoie, I think, run into a similar issue. I think Eric Jones did as well. Disappointing day for Kyle Busch, I'm sure. Let's put this race on the Groovy gauge. Goodyear brought a new, softer tire meant to wear out more over the long run, create greater lap time differential, more tire fall off. I'll be honest, I didn't notice much of a difference out there. Other than the groove widening quite a bit, I don't recall seeing that last year happen as much. So I guess that was a good thing. You know, you want tracks like this to be multiple grooves so that drivers don't have to get stuck behind each other's dirty air. As the race went on, and granted some of this may have been due to, different tire strategies. A lot of guys on 0 tires, 2 tires, 4 tires. As the race went on, we saw more passing, more moves and jostling for position. But early on especially, it was very tough to pass. Yeah, a lot of that's just New Hampshire. It's a flat 1 mile track. You're not going to get a ton of passing. It's not going to look like Atlanta did last week. And it's just not. It's never. You can bring any tire there. It's never going to look like Atlanta. It's never going to be a track with a ton of passing where you can go from 20th to 3rd in 5 laps. It's just never going to be the case. So I got to keep that in mind when I factor in my score here. It was a decent race despite Martin Truex Jr. dominating. There were several points where I thought, hey, if the cautions land right, I think Larson is charging through the field. Bell was charging through the field. They could be a factor if they could ever get their track position. Almirola wrecking out, of course, was a major plot twist. So I was entertained today. I thought it was a pretty good race. I'm going to give it a 68%. I'm not going to go all the way up to 70. I'm not going to say it was the nicest race in the world, but it's a 68%. It was a pretty good race, especially by New Hampshire Motor Speedway standards. I still like coming here once a year. I'm glad this track doesn't have 2 dates on the schedule. I thought the crowd for especially a Monday afternoon after the rain yesterday was pretty good. I think 1 race a year for New Hampshire is perfect. It's a fun track. It's a unique track that allows some different names and faces to be up front. Like Eric Almirola is not considered a favorite at most tracks. He is at New Hampshire. I like where New Hampshire slots in on the schedule. I thought today was a decent race. 68% on the Groovy gauge for me. That is going to do it for me. Let me know what you thought of today's Crayon 301 down in the comment section below. Let me know what you're thinking. But that is going to do it for this episode. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Be sure to hit that subscribe button down below if you're new to the channel and you love NASCAR. It helps me out a ton. And speaking of help, thank you so much to my Patreon supporters for your continued and very generous support. It truly helps this show out a ton. I'll be back later this week. Lots to talk about, I'm sure. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your Monday, folks.